Well, the stage is officially set. It will be Cleveland versus the Miami Heat coming your way on Sunday in the first round of the playoffs. Spence and I are here to preview that matchup with you and talk about a few other overarching topics as the Cavs get ready to embark on a postseason run. It's all coming your way on the latest episode of Courtside with the Cavs on SI. Well, we could have done without overtime because for whatever reason, all the overtime games seem to be happening of late. But excited about getting ready to preview the Cavaliers and Heat matchup with you here on Courtside with the Cavs on SI. I'm Spencer German, of course, my partner, Spencer Davies, Spencer Squared, coming your way. And if you watched our post-practice report from earlier, yes, I am still wearing the same shirt. It's been a very, very long day, but excited to be here. And Spence, we now can finally talk openly about the matchup that we're going to have in the first round of the playoffs between the Cavs and the Heat. Heat finishing off the Hawks tonight in overtime to advance out of the play-in tournament. And so this sets the stage for what should be a pretty fun series in the sense of, listen, you get one of the best coaches in the NBA coming to your barn for a 7-game series here coming up in the next week or so. You know that the Heat are going to push your limits and sort of test you, and the Cavs are going to have to, be ready to go, be on their P's and Q's as they get ready for this matchup.
There's a lot of storylines in this one. I think it's cool that we get to see Donovan Mitchell take on his best friend, Bam Adebayo, in a postseason matchup. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think that Max Strus facing the Miami Heat for the first time in his career in the playoffs is
Max
really cool.
Is going to hate the questions. He's going to be so mad by the end of the series
going
about
to be
these questions.
Very annoyed at that for sure. I was just so enthralled by watching Davion Mitchell in that game towards the end. Just the defensive intensity, the way he guards the ball, his just demeanor on the floor is really, really tough. So I think that that's going to be a very solid challenge for a guy like Darius Garland and also Donovan Mitchell to match that kind of energy. That's going to be fun to watch. You got to have the guys chasing around Duncan Robinson around, the floor, just like teams have to do with Max Strus and Sam Merrill with the Cavs. There's a lot of things out there. The bigs matchup is going to be phenomenal. Jared Allen and Evan Mobley versus Khalil Ware and Bam Adebayo. Ware, one of the more impressive rookies this season. And we know what Bam Adebayo brings to the table as far as just being that dribble handoff threat, being able to make shots in the mid-range, and also a downhill attacker, and really uses his body to get positioning too and can rebound the heck out of the ball. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how J.A. and Evan play against them. There's a lot of different ways we can go with this, but I think that really sets the table for it.
I should sort of get to our listeners here, anybody who's watching live on YouTube or elsewhere. Hit us up, and I think this is a good thing to sort of do throughout the show. We'll put some of these up at the end of the show. Give us your predictions for Cavs Heat in the first round. Are you going 5 games? Are you going 6 games? Are you going a full 7? How do you think it's going to pan out? Send us those in the comment section. But yeah, Spence, I think you break down a lot of the X's and O's, some of the individual matchups, some of the great storylines that we'll have from this matchup. And one that you didn't hit on that I think is maybe the most fascinating here is Spo versus Kenny Atkinson and the chess match between these two coaches. So much has been said about Kenny Atkinson only having a handful of games of playoff coaching experience as a head coach. Spo, obviously, his resume speaks for itself. There's a reason he's considered one of the best coaches in the game, if not the best coach in the game right now. He's phenomenal. He knows his stuff. And the thing that I think is so interesting, this is maybe the silver lining to getting the Heat, because you know how I feel about the Heat. I bring this up all the time. I just feel like anytime the Cavs play the Heat, it doesn't go well. They always seem to bring out the worst in the Cavs. They always seem to exploit your weaknesses. And that's the point I want to get to, because Spo has such a unique way of, I kind of compare this to, he's like the Mike Tomlin of the NBA, where even if he's working with as talented of a roster as you, he will always find a way to keep his team competitive and make those games interesting. He can exploit things in you. And so even though I'm I don't want to say nervous, but even though the Heat, I think, are a more challenging matchup than what the Hawks would have been for this Cavaliers team, maybe the silver lining is you're going to get tested immediately and you're going to really have like a grueling series on your hands. And that's going to make you, I think, raise your game even higher if you're the Cavs. There's no like coast through the first round series here. It's like, nope, be ready. Game one, this team's going to come for you. They're going to try to exploit your weaknesses. The downside to that is maybe he shows some things to teams later in the playoffs that like how to beat you or how to exploit you. But if the Cavs have counters to that and Kenny Atkinson has counters to that, it's going to set the stage for, I think, like his brilliance on full display and really set the tone for whatever postseason run that lies ahead for Cleveland.
Most definitely. Do you want to run down on the scout for Miami? Because
sure.
I feel like I've been watching them pretty closely.
Spent.
Okay, so the thing with Miami, I've noticed the last couple of games, they get off to really good starts. They defend well, they get out in the open floor, and they make you pay. Tyler Herro is going to get downhill. He's also going to pull up. He's got a lot of different things working for him right now because he's the number one option. And Herro made some big-time shots in this elimination game tonight, and they were some really heavily contested shots, too, that he was making. So he is able to do that. He's going to make some tough shots throughout this series. Cavs fans have to just kind of come to grace with that. But the way that you can get to them, though, is that Miami, in the fourth quarter in particular, they tend to let their guard down. If they have a lead going in, they're someone that really doesn't play a full 48. And I feel like that has happened to the Cavs in the past before, but that's something they can take advantage of in this series, is making sure that they play hardest for 48 minutes over what Miami brings to the table. But again, the Heat, they're pretty deep, man. I think we even brought up Kyle Anderson making some ridiculous corner threes in the third quarter of this game. He's obviously been someone who's been around the block. I think that he can bring a different dynamic for this squad. The Cavs are also deep. We know this. The Cavs are going to probably go about 10 deep if I had to guess in this first round. I don't think they're going to only take it down to 9. I think you're going to see Sam, Isaac, and Dean all play, in addition to Ty and DeAndre coming off the bench. If DeAndre comes off the bench this entire series, we'll see. We obviously don't know what the rotations and the lineups are going to look like yet, but I'm intrigued to see that Kenny-Spo matchup like you were just talking about. I think that Cleveland will have to do a good job of getting these rebounds. The thing that we've focused on the most in that practice, at least I did, asking them about defensive rebounding, and they're talking about hitting first and the buzzword physical, being physical, making sure that you're on a body, you're not ball watching, and when that thing goes up, you find a body and you put a body on them. And that's the big thing I think with beating Miami here too, would be to make sure you secure those boards after stops, because outside of Tyler Herro and Bam Adebayo, I mean, even though Bam's not as consistent offensively as Tyler Herro, and we obviously saw what Davion Mitchell did tonight, primary scoring-wise, I think that they're beatable. I mean, Andrew Wiggins, he's been there for a little bit, and he had some solid play tonight, and the other night, really, defensively for them, but I don't think he's quite that kind of primary option the way that Tyler Herro is. They've got a good squad, though, and their record definitely isn't indicative of the type of team they had, and that was post-All-Star break, post-trade deadline, obviously when the Jimmy Butler stuff was over with. So should be in for a good one.
I'll say this about Andrew Wiggins too, because you brought him up sort of at the end there. For whatever reason over the course of his career, maybe it's because he has a grudge because the Cavs traded him when they got LeBron back. I don't know, but he has seemed to almost be this like Cavalier killer in a way. Like he always seems to bring his A game when he plays the Cavaliers. He's put up some big numbers against them in the past. I don't have like the exact ones off the top of my head, but I can recall some bigger performances and some big games from him when he's matched up against Cleveland. So something to keep in mind, even though he's, as to your point, like not the primary option on this team necessarily, he might get, on a heater here against this Cavs team. He certainly is capable of that. And it might just be sort of motivated and driven by the fact that, he wants to exact a little revenge against the team that drafted him and then traded him away pretty quickly. So we'll see what all that looks like. But yeah, you laid it out pretty well there. They're a deep team. They're not a team that like the Heat aren't at a place right now where they have like that superstar player anymore, like the way Jimmy Butler was, that they can necessarily like turn to in crunch time, but they have a number of guys that can kill you at that time of the game, including Tyler Herro, who took over tonight and made some really big shots. So you have to be sort of on your P's and Q's, as I said. The chess match that's going to play out between Atkinson and Spo will be very, very fun to watch. And we'll see how they both deploy their two very deep rosters kind of against each other.
And one more thing I want to add before we move on. Miami is known to execute that zone. And that's something that gave the Cavs some headaches the last time they saw them at Rocket Arena. So that's just something to keep an eye on. Defensively, they can throw a wrench in. The Cavs, as we know, and Kenny Atkinson likes to go to zone 2 sometimes. So we could be seeing quite a bit of zone coverage in this series and seeing how teams try to beat that, get the ball to the middle, and obviously being able to play make out of the short roll and finding ways to attack that zone.
I just hate playing the Heat, man. It's like anytime the Cavs had to play the Heat.
This was your worst case scenario,
dude,
the way you were talking on the pod the last few weeks.
We talked about it on the pod earlier this week, though. I actually think Orlando was the worst case scenario because of how physical they play. But this is probably second worst for me because I just, you know what, you just know what you're going to get with this team. You know it's going to be a very hard fought series. It's not going to be like a rollover thing. And like I said, there's a silver lining to that, and that the Cavs maybe sort of they wake up, they're ready to go. They're going to be, ramped up and amped up for this one. There's no like lollygagging into it. But yeah, man, like Spo's just such a brilliant basketball mind. Like, I worry about how he deploys this team, and we'll see what it looks like. And you bring things up like the zone and all that. It just makes me a little bit nervous, but I still feel like the Cavs are going to win. Again, a reminder,
in your face.
Send us your predictions for the series in the comments section or on Twitter, obviously, if you're watching us there. Cavs in 5, 6, 7. Maybe you're going to just shock the world, and they're going to get some Heat fans in here tonight who are going to say the Heat in 7. I don't know. But
well, I'll add one thing. I mean, I don't know if it's the last time they went in the playoff, but there was one time where they went from the play-in and got all the way to the NBA Finals.
They did.
Max Strus was on that team.
Now, they did have Jimmy Butler at that time, so it was different. But, yes, you're right. They have done this before, and so there will be a little nervous. There will always be that thought in the back of your mind that it could happen, but I feel like the Cavs will be well prepared for it. Speaking of being well prepared, Spence, I think this is an important and interesting sort of overarching topic to get into as we get ready for the playoffs starting on Sunday. And I don't know, like people ask different iterations of this question. I think on this show, the way I want to ask it is who has the most to prove for the Cavs this postseason. And the thing I find fascinating about this, Spence, is we might have very different answers to this question, because I do think there's a number of people who go into the playoffs on this team with a lot to prove in the core four otherwise. And so I'll let you answer first, but I'm fascinated to see where we kind of go with this and who we feel like is coming into the postseason, understanding that this stage could be a really important moment for their careers. Who do you think, to start us off, has the most to prove in this upcoming playoff run?
I feel like we're going to be on the same page on this one. So I'm going to go with Darius Garland, just because of the fact that he's got to be able to handle the physicality. He's got to be able to handle getting picked on defensively. I know that Kenny hasn't hit him. He's been willing to switch him out onto the bigger forwards and has made him stay stout, stay in front, making sure that he's playing that role, and then also off-ball defensively being able to play that free safety role and get pick sixes going the other way. Shot making for Darius Garland, I think, is huge, because obviously post All-Star break until the last few games, he was not making his shots the way that he was. And it's not just the three-point shot. It was the floaters that we kept talking about. Drastic dip in the teardrop percentage. So if he's making those floaters, if he is making those three-point shots and confidently taking them, taking 8, 9, 10 a game instead of just trying to be too much of a playmaker, then I think that they're going to be in a really good way in this postseason. And that's, I think, the person that has the most to prove. I think I know where you're going to go with this, but equally, I would say DG and then probably who you pick too.
Well, so listen, DG was going to be my first answer. This is part of the reason why I let you go first, because I know if you go first, I can always pivot. I don't want to steal your answer and then have you just be like, I agree. So I try to make it more fun for the show. I would have said coming in, DG was probably going to be my first answer in terms of him having the most to prove this postseason for all the reasons you laid out. And I mean, here's another part of this too, Spence. Like, let's face it. If the Cavs fall short in this postseason, or the assumption going in, I think by most fans, is this team should at least get to the Eastern Conference Finals in a matchup against Boston. And if you lost to Boston, especially if it's in like 6 or 7 games, I think people would be understanding of that, because Boston's such a good team. They would be upset, but they think they'd at least be understanding. And so if they fall short, like in the first or second round or something like that, and it was like this shocking thing, the person that's going to get most of the – Donovan's going to get – because he's like the star player, quote unquote. But the next person that gets the blame, and I think they probably get more of it, is Darius. I mean, think about the conversations around Darius last year the second things went bad or the second they lose in the playoffs, everything turns to they got to trade Darius. He can't fit with Donovan Mitchell. And I know we discussed those things from like a standpoint of, hey, can it work? Like what does them on the floor together tell us? We talk about it from a different standpoint, but there's a lot of fans who are just like, no, it doesn't work. He doesn't show up in big moments. Get him out of here, and ignore the context of like what he was going through last year and all those things. So I think about the conversation around Darius Garland and how that just like rises back to the surface if this team falls short or comes up short in the playoffs, especially if he's not playing very well throughout the postseason. So I love that answer. I think it's a really good one. I'm going to go a little bit not against the grain. I shouldn't say that, but to play devil's advocate, I'm going to throw Evan Mobley as my answer. And the reason I say that, Spence, is because we have been spending several years now, us and others, talking about how important he is to whatever leap this Cavaliers team is going to take in the future, how he has to become the best player on this team at some point. And I'm not saying he's there yet at being the best player on the team, but he's certainly like, if Donovan's 1A, he's 1B. Like, he's right there with everything that he does. And he clearly, I mean, we were watching these games night in and night out. He clearly took that next leap this season to the level where Cavs fans were hoping. And so him now being able to do that in the playoffs, him being able to bring a different intensity in certain moments and take over games in certain moments when he needs to on the offensive end and on the defensive end, which has always been his bread and butter and sort of his staple and the thing he falls back on when the other end isn't going so well. But for him to do that for, 40 plus minutes in some of these games, once you get deeper into the playoffs and do it at a high level and prove on this stage that he's that type of player and that he is trending towards him. And he said it himself, him and Wemby potentially being the two best players in this league at some point. Like it starts here for him. And so I do think Evan has a lot to prove on. He's proved a lot already this season in terms of his development, but on this stage specifically, I think he has a lot to prove about like his importance to this team. And there, I think this team is going to go as far as he takes them.
That's not a hot take at all. I agree with that 100%. And that was going to be my other answer. So we were on the same page on that. With Evan, it's really about just doing it in the playoffs. And we saw what he was able to do against Boston last year. But that iteration of Evan wasn't even close to what this iteration of Evan Mobley is. And that is a playmaker. That is somebody who pushes the ball in transition, finds his teammates, but also is not shy away from contact. He's going into bodies. He's shooting the three-pointer. He's doing a lot of different stuff. So I think that is really a dynamic that the Cavs have not had in the playoffs yet. And I'm really looking forward to seeing, eager to watch Evan kind of grow in front of our eyes in this playoffs because he's talking like it. He knows that he has to be the guy to take that next step. And he's done it in the regular season. We see it in the postseason, and Max Strus believes in him. Jared Allen believes in him. We know that Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell believe in him because of the way they talk about that guy. So I'm really eager to see how Evan does in these playoffs because I don't think that it was a mirage what we saw in those 82 games. I think that's who he is. That's who he's going to become, and there's even more to come from that. So with Evan and Darius, I think those are the two that have the quote-unquote most to prove for sure. And even going back to Darius, Kenny talked about it too. He's like, you're 25. I need you to be 28. I thought that was a great quote. It's just like, you've been here a couple of times now. Evan Mobley's been here a couple of times now. So they should know what's coming. Donovan Mitchell's obviously the one that has the most playoff experience. And then you have a guy like Max Strus. But you've been here. You know what to do. You know what's coming. The physicality's coming. You have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to take care of the basketball. That's another huge thing we didn't hit on, is making sure that you're winning the possession game by getting the rebounds, but also not hurting yourself. Because a lot of the times Cleveland in the past has hurt itself, playing in small crowds, trying to get a pass in between into the pocket that has no airspace. You have to be aware, and every possession matters in the playoffs. And I think that they get that, and I think that Kenny is going to instill that into them, but it's also on the players to just recognize that and know what's coming.
Yeah, I think that's really well said by you, Spin. And frankly, like with going back to Evan for a second, like you brought up the last year, how well he played. For him, it's like about building on that, right? Like, can he do that now once he has the rest of the team around him, is he going to sort of pick up where he left off last year in the playoffs against that team? And otherwise, and let's face it, like the Celtics are the boogeyman of this conference. Like they're the defending champs of the team. Everyone's going to have to probably go through them to get to a championship if they want to get there. And so understanding that, like players like Evan in his evolution, the leaps that he's taken, he is pivotal to being able to take down the Goliath, quote unquote, that is the Boston Celtics, along with somebody like DeAndre Hunter, who we talked to today. And I actually asked him the question about like how much pride he takes in understanding like he was traded for to help them get over the hump against a team like Boston. Like, yes, he's an important piece that you added for that, but it also comes down to somebody like Evan being able to match up in that game, because there's not a lot of players, maybe even in the NBA, across the NBA, who can do what he can do. And so he's like this unicorn mismatch advantage that the Cavaliers have. And so he's going to have to play his best in that series if we get there. I will say this about Donovan real quick, because I do think Donovan is a reasonable answer to this question as well. And his whole thing, I think, just stems from like how he's perceived nationally, right? Because for Donovan, he's at a point where we already know he's a superstar or a star player in this league. He's at least top 20, if not top 15 in this league when you talk about like the best players in the sport right now. And for him, it's like getting to the Eastern Conference Finals or getting to an NBA Finals, I think takes him to like another level of how he's talked about. And maybe then he enters the conversation as like top 10 in this league. Like, so for him, it's about like his legacy and how he's talked about. But I don't think like, as long as he doesn't no show in the playoffs, nobody's going to like sit there and like be harsh on Donovan Mitchell because they understand the great player that he is, I think so. But I do think that's a fair answer if you're sort of looking big picture with him in terms of like what he has to gain from just a national respect standpoint, as people still sort of forget about him as a guy who's just playing in Cleveland and played in Utah before this.
I want to get into as well something that the Cavs have not had the luxury of having in the postseason the last few years too.
Sure.
And that's multiple ball handlers. You obviously have Darius who can ball handle. You have Donovan Mitchell who handles it a different way and is obviously really good at playmaking now. You now have Evan Mobley who's able to do that. You have Ty Jerome who's able to do that too. So that gives you 4 right off the bat.
Yeah.
DeAndre Hunter can create for himself, whether that's off the bench or in with the core 4. And then you have more off-ball movement. You have more guys who are able to create for themselves without the ball in their hands so that then the creators can get them the ball. Isaac Okoro, for example, being used in the small pick and roll and then being able to play make out of the pocket. You have Max Strus, who's always snaking around the half court trying to draw attention away. Sam Merrill, same thing. Dean Wade's out there able to stretch the floor and also will give you somebody who can create space for drivers. So that's, I think, something that they haven't had as well when it's been this time of year. And that's a lot different than saying, okay, we took away Darius Garland. We took away Donovan Mitchell. Who else can do something? Because that was something the Cavs couldn't figure out. Because once they were turning them over and they had them in their heads, then it was kind of over from there. But with this team, you get it from all angles. And you can do it at 3 different speeds, as we've talked about all year long. They can play in the half court, which is mostly where the playoffs come down to. They can play really fast, and then they can play that normal speed, that kind of well-paced but not rushing. And I think that's going to really pay off for them in these next couple months.
Yeah, I mean, they're so versatile that way, both with what you mentioned there with the ball handlers, but also just with how deep their bench is. They have so many different things they can deploy. And, you know, how Kenny Atkinson uses those guys and how this all kind of looks is going to be fascinating to follow. Let's get to some of the comments before we ask our final question of the show, Spence. I know we talked about this a couple days ago, so I'm sure you at least have some sort of answer sort of crafted here, but we'll get to that here coming up. I want to throw some of these up there. The Tribe of Judah chimes in. Cavs in 6. Love Spoelstra matchup for Kenny, though. Yeah, I think the Spoelstra matchup with Kenny is an underrated element to this because as people, again, have talked about, limited playoff experience for Kenny Atkinson. I love the fact that he's going to get tested right out of the gate with one of the best minds out there. Like that's like he's already coached under Steve Kerr, so he's seen how his mind works. But now he gets to try to do some of those things against one of the best in the business. It almost feels like a rite of passage, right? Like he's going to earn his stripes if assuming they advance in this series. And so I love that for him and for this team.
I think that that's a really good point too. And don't forget, he coached under Ty Lue too. Like these
Yeah,
are
that's
championship level coaches that he's spent time with and kind of taken things. And if you look at our YouTube page and when Kenny talked the other day, it's a 16-minute interview, by the way. So if you got some time, take a look at it. He was really adamant about not being too much of an overhand, an overcoaching in the postseason. He leans a lot on DeMare Carroll to give him the player perspective. So not doing a shoot around for an hour 20 and doing a 45-minute one instead so that the players are rested. That's another key thing too for about this week that they've had off, is that they've really focused on the body and making sure that these guys are fresh going into the playoffs. And that right there, they're going in with a clean bill of health. They've got their entire rotation and roster available to them, and he can use them as they so speak. But I feel like with Kenny, strategically, I am just chomping at the bit to see what he's got up his sleeve. And I would laugh if everything we saw in the regular season as far as rotation goes go out the window when it comes to the playoffs. You got Evan playing with DG, and you got J.A. and Donovan leaning on each other. And I don't know. I don't think it's something where if it's not broke, don't fix it, of course. But I think that Kenny, he's a savvy guy, and I think that we might see a few tricks.
It's definitely going to be fun. Our friend Umano_2 says J.A. is his answer for who has the most to prove. I actually think of the core four, and this is no offense to you, Umano. I think of the core four guys. I think J.A. had to me has the least amount of pressure. I understand he's been hurt the last couple of years. I understand from 2 years ago, you're going to hate this comment, Spence. The not physical enough thing, and he got bullied against the Knicks, and he was the one who said the lights were too bright. I understand those things still sort of haunt him. But I think if you watch these games, you know how important JA is to what they do, especially on the defensive end of the floor. He's never going to demand the ball on offense. Like he doesn't have to operate that way. Like he's so valuable. Like I think as long as he doesn't get completely exploited, and there might be some games where he's not finishing the game out there on the floor because just of matchups, right? We've seen Kenny do that a couple times this year, and that's okay too. But I don't I think there's definitely the answers we talked about, I think have more to prove than somebody like J.A.
I think that he did a hell of a job against the Magic, and then he got elbowed in the rib cage. And I think that it's nothing towards him to really give him crap about. And he played all 82 this year. Commend him for that. He's taken time off, the last few days, got back in the gym now, and he's ready to go, mentally refreshed, physically refreshed. I don't see J.A. crumbling under any pressure. I see him being pretty aggressive and knowing what Kenny can get out of him, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Two more here. We have another prediction from our friend B. Skrills. He says Cavaliers in 6. That's the popular pick in the chat right now, is Cavaliers in 6. And then here's actually a fun little question that we can answer, Spence. And I'm curious your perspective on this, because my initial thought is Mitchell is the answer. But I also think it could change just how the game sort of unfolds. Who's guarding Herro? Probably Mitchell, right? What say you?
Ooh, who's guarding Herro? That's a really good question. I think that they're going to throw a bunch of different looks at him. I wouldn't be surprised to see Max Strus on Tyler Herro.
I was thinking that was my second answer, was either Strus, maybe Mitchell starts on him and then it goes to Strus, or Strus starts on him and then it goes to I could see it alternating, but yeah.
I could also see Isaac Okoro being that guy, knowing that he's the primary defender. But of course, if Duncan Robinson's out there, you're going to probably want Isaac Okoro on him because he's a really good guy at chasing off ball and making sure that he's denying any kind of dribble handoff or something like that. So that's a good question, though. That's a really good question. I'm sure we'll see Evan Mobley switched out onto Herro a number of times because Eric's going to dial something up where he gets a switch on to J.A. or Evan out on the perimeter, and then other guys are going to have to find a body and make sure that they don't get exploited on a mismatch. That's a really good question. And I'll reiterate this that I said at the beginning of the podcast. Tyler Herro is going to make shots that are going to make you very angry. And it's going to be not always be bad defense. Sometimes good offense beats good defense. So just brace yourself for that, for sure. But I think that they can limit what Tyler Herro does and they can get the rebounds. I think they're going to be in okay shape, because tonight in Atlanta, when I was watching, I feel like, Haywood Highsmith didn't make most of his 3 opportunities. Anytime that Tyler Herro was able to spray out to the outside, I think Andrew Wiggins missed a couple. They're going to make someone else than Tyler beat them as a ball handler and as a playmaker. Now, Davion Mitchell, he's been waiting for this moment. This is something that he hasn't had in his career yet. And let's not forget, that's a guy who is a stud at Baylor. They call him Off Night for a reason. He is going to be on Donovan Mitchell. I'm looking forward to seeing that. He's going to be on Darius Garland too. Like, he is going to have some really, really solid ball pressure that the Cavs are going to have to be ready for.
I do find it funny, by the way, as you were talking about Tyler Herro, that after all the years of Tyler Herro like being linked to trade rumors for Miami, he somehow was the one that outlasted Jimmy Butler. That's kind of ironic to me.
Kevin loved it. Kevin loved it. Remember how Kevin Love was in the trade rumors for the Cavs all the time?
And then he ended up being the last man standing from that era. That's so funny.
Isn't it though? I have one thing too. I saw a comment in here. I think it was by Umano again. It says Heat match up well with Cleveland.
I saw that too. Yeah.
This is more of a me thing, but is there ever a time where a playoff matchup is set and someone says, "Oh, they just don't match up well with them"? Like I feel like yes, there is times.
There are times, yes.
Yeah,
but,
there's times, but like I just feel like it. I feel like it's very generic. I don't know. Like, no offense.
Like, for example, looking back on this is going to open up all kinds of cans of worms. I apologize, but looking back on the Knicks Cavs series from 2 years ago, I think if I was the dumb one who went on the radio and said bring them on or whatever, but if you really go back and look, like, yeah, that Knicks team was actually kind of a bad matchup. The way they were constructed and everything versus the Cavs, I think there are instances where that happens. Another example, I forget. It was the early 2000s when the Mavs went into the playoffs as the 1 seed and they got upset by Golden State. This is like pre-Steph Curry Golden State. This is like they upset them as the 8 seed versus the 1 seed because they just were a bad matchup. So I think it happens, but I think you're right. Like, usually we are sort of framing these things as like, that's a tough matchup for whatever team they have to go against. So
not trying to insult anyone's intelligence or anything like that. It's just another trope for me. I'm gonna laugh like the minute that Boston steps foot into into Orlando, and Orlando has like this awesome like rebounding performance, and they're bodying them up. That someone says, "Oh, the Magic were a bad matchup for Boston because they're a bigger team," and there's really like only like 3-4 teams that are like physical, I guess. So Orlando is definitely one of them, by the way. But we're getting a ton of participation here, by the way. So I'm down to keep this open for a couple more minutes, by the way.
By the way, I'm referring to, I believe, the Monte Ellis Golden State Warriors. That was literally like
B. Diddy,
that
Andres Biedrins.
Yeah. Like that's how far back we got to go for that.
Oh yeah.
I was gonna throw Beast Girls back up here because he said hopefully 5. He's amending his prediction a little bit there, which we're okay with. We will accept it. The series hasn't started yet. So, what else we got? Let's see. Do you think Kenny will start Hunter in the playoffs or just go against Boston if we advance there? Obviously, this is we're gonna get this question a lot. Yep. Spin. I'll say it again. I don't think it matters. I'm okay if he wants to start Max Strus because that's just kind of been what's working all season. I think it's actually better that he can use Hunter off the bench and deploy him in different ways. And to me, it's more important like who's ending the game. Like in crunch time, if you're in a close game, do you need more offense? Okay, well then Hunter's going to be out there, right? And if not, maybe you need more grit. Then it's maybe going to be Max Strus. So there's so many different ways you can play this thing. I'm as fascinated as everybody else to see how that plays out, but I'm not as worried about who starts. I'm more worried about like when he uses these players and who's maybe finishing the game.
Depends on matchups.
Yes.
That's what it depends on. Man, we got a bunch of comments coming in. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I was going to go through some more. That was the 2007 Warriors. Yep, that's one. Yep, I knew it was the early 2000s.
Rich, Matt Barnes.
Like I said, Monte Ellis. It was pre-Steph Curry, Monte Ellis, which is funny because Monte Ellis was there when Steph Curry got there, and then it became like, do we keep Monte Ellis or do we keep Steph Curry? I think they made the right decision on that one, by the way.
It was the old Dion Waiters versus Kyrie Irving argument.
Tyler Herro, Guitar Hero, Mr. Hero. I don't care. Cavs in 5. What a classic comment. This is my favorite one of the night. I love it. I'm just picturing the LeBron with the do-rag and the cigarette in his mouth meme that always made the rounds on social media. Great comment from Freddie B here. Let's go to Dan Harris. He says, my hot take, by the way, First round for the Cavs would be more of a fight than the second. Pacers could barely beat our G League, and the Bucks we swept, and now we don't have, and now they don't have Lillard. Lillard actually is back.
Yeah,
Lillard's back.
Lillard is back.
Yeah.
Thankfully, by the way, the deep vein thrombosis, that's always scary when you talk about blood clots and stuff like that. It's very, very, very relieving that he can play, and obviously, it's going to give them an entirely different dynamic than what they've been used to the last month or so, and I'm looking forward to that playoff series myself. I'm looking forward to a lot of playoff series, man. Knicks Pistons should be a blast. I think that Nuggets Clippers could be one of those underrated ones.
It's going to be fun to watch Cavs fans root for JB Bickerstaff all of a sudden. We want you to win, JB. Take down those pesky Knicks that nobody likes. We hate them.
How ironic, right? Isn't it ironic that we've gotten here?
It is kind of funny. I want to go back to Freddie B, by the way. He said, I don't fan scared. The Heat need to be worried about us. The Cavaliers themselves would approve of this comment. They feel very slighted, so much so that I talked to Tristan Thompson on 92.3 The Fan earlier, and he said that they feel slighted by the fact that the NBA is putting their second game of the series on NBA TV instead of like a national network. So that's a good comment because the Cavaliers feel the same way. They're like, we're the 1 seed. You should be worried about us. We're not worried about you. Put us on national TV, please. So I like that comment from Freddie. Freddie's been on a roll tonight, so I like where Freddie said that with these. Cavs have to be prepared for a lot with Miami's own defense. Yep, Spencer, you obviously talked about that earlier. 100% lots of good matchups to watch this season. I can't wait in regards to just all the series that are sort of coming on the pike here. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of fun ones, and we'll see how it all plays out. Spence, we'll get out of here with this question that we had talked about earlier in the week. And it's less of a question, more so of like a fill in the blank. But I think this is a fun exercise to close with. So, the Cleveland Cavaliers will win a championship if fill in the blank.
Evan Mobley gets to that next echelon. I think that's number one.
Yeah.
I feel like
I'm shaking my head because naturally we're like on the same page. It must be a Spencer thing. I don't know. We have this like Spence sense.
Must be Spence sense. No, it's. I know it sounds like a cop out and the most obvious answer, but I feel like that's the truth. I mean, if you want another answer, like if they make shots, like how many times have we seen them go cold, in the month of March, and that's just not what their MO is. Can they get back to shot making the way they were? Because if they get back to shot making, that's going to be better for their defense because they're going to be less long rebounds and they're going to be able to get set. Same on the other end. If they can force stops on the other end, get rebounds and get in transition, that's what they do best.
I think all of that's well said. My answer too is Evan Mobley because I just think so much of this run and so much of winning a championship, especially coming out of the East where you have to play Boston, is going to center around what he does, right? And I don't want to like add any extra pressure to him. Not that he's listening to this right now. I don't think he's one of the almost 1,600 people listening at this very hour. But if anybody plays this for him, I don't want him to think I'm trying to add any extra pressure. And I think the thing is, like, I think he knows that. Like, I think he knows how important he is to this team. I think it was Max Strus talking today about how Evan showed up to camp this year and he had just a different attitude about him. He was like, I know I got to be more. I know I have to take more of a role here. I know I have to sort of do more. I know I have to take more on. I have to be more prominent. I have to demand the ball a little bit more. And he's shown that throughout the season. So I think he's ready for that challenge and he's ready to embrace it. But I agree with you, man. Like so much of this run is baked in what Evan does. And so I do think the number one thing for this to answer this question of the Cavs will win a championship if Evan Mobley continues his evolution into the playoffs and takes, keeps his game at that level for each round of the playoffs and can sort of do that throughout the postseason. So I think that's the number one answer. On the shot making thing, I think that kind of goes back to the Darius part of this. Like, is Darius back locked in? Is he knocking down threes? Because we know how important the three is to this team. I think that's a huge one. And on a smaller scale, I think, like, listen, if you draw Boston at some point, if you're fortunate enough to advance that far, DeAndre Hunter was brought in to help sort of equalize a series against them. And so can DeAndre Hunter sort of be that missing piece for you who can match a little bit of the great wings that Boston has on both ends of the floor and give you that spark that you were looking for?
Yep. I'm right with you, buddy. I'm right with you.
Classic the Spence sense, as I mentioned. Real quick here, Dan Harris says, if we can defend the three well, I think that's a really good answer. Robbie Miller says, this might be the most fascinating playoffs in a while. I can't wait. You know what I'll say on that real quick? One of the things that makes it the most fascinating is, like, there's obviously Boston, who's going to be a clear-cut favorite because they're defending champs and all that. But like, it does feel like the field's pretty wide open around, especially in the West. Like the Cavs have a shot. I think the Thunder are clearly the best team in the West. But there's people who are saying the Lakers, watch out for the Lakers. There's people saying watch out for Golden State. Like it feels like the West especially has some intriguing matchup. Like things could sort of really play out differently there. In the East, it
The
really
West
does
is going
feel
to
like a
beat the
two-horse
living
race,
hell
but-
out of each other.
Yeah, I mean that's gonna be a wild series. You know, does Nico Harrison get a little revenge run from his Mavericks here, where he then sort of feels validated for making the trade, even though he doesn't have Kyrie now? I don't know. So there's a lot of fun storylines for sure. And for the Cavs, it all gets rolling on Sunday, 7 p.m. over at Rocket Arena. Spence and I will be there. We're very excited about it. We're ready for the playoffs to get rolling here, and we'll have you covered. So we implore you to continue finding more content like this, including previous episodes of Courtside with the Cavs on SI at the Cleveland Cavs on SI YouTube channel. We have a ton of other content up there as well. So we were both out of practice today. Spencer did a great job getting all the videos up of guys we talked to: DeAndre Hunter, Max Strus, Isaac Okoro. We'll have a couple more of those for you tomorrow because they got practice again tomorrow. And then we're off and running with the postseason, obviously, on Sunday. So again, all that great content over there. You can find our written content over at Cleveland Cavaliers and SI, the real website, si.com/NBA/Cavaliers. I got a story up there about that Tristan Thompson comments on the being slighted by the NBA by being on NBA TV. So there's some good stuff over there, and we encourage you to check that out as well. Spence, any final thoughts before we talk to everybody again? Well, we'll talk to them again tomorrow, but ahead of Sunday before the playoffs really get rolling.
Shout out to Dan Harris. Free throws. Make your free throws, kids. Those are big. Those are big, especially come playoff time. That's a big one there. And, you talked about Dallas there for a second, but apparently they're not doing so well in Memphis right now. So we don't know the winner of that game yet. So we will see.
The Nico Harrison comments are very tongue-in-cheek. I like ripping on Nico Harrison every chance I get. I honestly thought the Lakers signing Rob Pelinka to an extension today felt like another nudge of Nico Harrison. Like, man, you got put over the barrel by this guy, and he got an extension. And you're just the most hated GM in sports right now. So I try to sort of say it tongue in cheek. It's fun, but hopefully I never have to work under Nico Harrison because it's not going to go well for me. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight, especially on a Friday. We got over 1,700 people on a Friday night. That's awesome. But keep on following along with all things Cleveland Cavaliers with the Cleveland Cavaliers on SI.